The identity of the Sith in The Acolyte has been one of the biggest points of discussion so far. Looking back on this question deep into the show, it seems the answer has been staring us in the face the entire time. There's a chance the show will completely surprise us, but the evidence is stacked up for one character in particular. So grab your Sith helmets as we run through all of the clues left behind so far.
Your sister being alive doesn't change anything.
And we'll also get into how this mysterious Sith fits into canon and whether it's the master and apprentice. But before we get into all of that, if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to give it a big old thumbs up. And if you want to catch more of our Star Wars videos, then remember to subscribe to the channel. Now, with all of that out of the way, let's get into the big Sith reveal in The Acolyte.
What is that?
Identify yourself.
Stand down!
It's been long debated amongst Star Wars fans, and with each passing episode, it seems to be becoming more and more obvious as to who the mysterious masked menace is. First appearing at the end of episode 1, where we also hear its first line of dialogue,
"An acolyte kills without a weapon."
And as we come forwards to episode 4, it's clear to see that unlike May's other connection throughout the show in Chimera, May fears the Sith Master, and she's well aware that if she fails her mission to kill a Jedi without a weapon, which is part of an agreement they have, then she'll be killed. Now, it's not been said what this agreement consists of, but I think it's probably something along the lines of the Sith agreeing to train May in the ways of the dark side. As unlike her sister who went off with the Jedi, May wouldn't have had any type of training with the Force after the fall of Brendok. However, in return, she needs to follow through with her own personal objective to kill these 4 specific Jedi. However, she needs to do it in a particular way to prove herself worthy of one day becoming a Sith apprentice. And let's face it, if the Sith wish to remain hidden, training individuals in your ways and letting them off scot-free to wander the galaxy isn't the way to go about it. So if May fails, she wouldn't become an apprentice, and her death would also be the result of the Sith trying to tie up loose ends for their own continued survival. Now, in the final moments of the episode, after May made the bizarre choice of suddenly deciding she didn't want to kill 4 Jedi anymore, instead she wants to be loyal to her sister Osha, which is quite frankly bizarre. However, I think it's intended to be this way, and it's actually going to tie into this Sith theory, so bear what May did there in mind, as we'll talk about that a little later. So after stringing up Quimera, May finds her way into Kelnucker's domicile, where she finds Kelnucker dead in his chair, with a smouldering lightsaber wound across his body. So at this point, her plan to surrender to the Wookiee, hand herself into the Jedi, and then tell him everything she knows about her Dark Master is all up in flames. The Jedi have the entrance surrounded, but it's the realization that her master's there on Kothar that struck real fear into her eyes. Now the master appears behind Osha, almost like a wraith before coming into focus. He shows off his red lightsaber before pushing Osha to the side, which is an interesting move which could speak to his long-term ambitions, before using the Force to effortlessly push the Jedi away. Now, I have to say, the Sith silently descended in the background behind Osha, out of focus, gave me massive horror movie vibes. At first, it looked like they're actually flying, but this is actually an ability we've seen before in 2003's The Clone Wars, where we saw Count Dooku use it. Now, if we're looking back at Legends, Star Wars stories that aren't considered canon, which is worth doing as the showrunner has mentioned that they've pulled from Legends when making this show, which we've already seen here and there, but there's a clear Sith lineage that covers the period of the Acolyte all the way to the movies. Of course, we all know Palpatine, the Sith Lord who succeeded in tipping the scales, executing Order 66, creating the Empire and all but wiping the Jedi out.
First Galactic Empire!
But he's far too young to appear in this show. However, there's some masters before him that are around at this point. So we've got Plagueis, who is Palpatine's master. Now the timelines in Legends where these Sith operate are blurry, but Plagueis could well be there, and so could his master Darth Tenebrous. So potentially, we're looking at both Sith being active at the time of the Acolyte. But at the very least, one of them would be. But one extremely important detail to note here is what all the Sith mentioned here have in common, and that's the fact they all have second identities. They don't go around being a powerful Sith Lord 24/7. It's a time in the galaxy where the dark side's very much on the back foot, forced to lurk in the shadows. Palpatine was a politician, Plagueis was high up in finance, and his master Tenebrous was a ship designer. This is pretty much a Star Wars tradition at this point when it comes to the Sith, so it's likely the new one in the Acolyte is no different. So what we're looking for here is essentially a character that we've already seen in the show, using their public everyday identity. The Sith always seem to hide in plain sight. But to be able to do this, they need to also be masters of deception. They need to be able to mask their true identities at any given opportunity, otherwise the Sith wouldn't have lasted this long without being discovered, and there's only one character we've seen in the show that's demonstrated all of that, and it's May's fumbling, idiot-like sidekick Kymir.
Oh, hey, hey.
Which I'm sure is just his public identity, and once we've gone through all the clues, it's pretty much undeniable, which leaves the next part of the mystery being whether he's the Sith Master or the Sith Apprentice. One of the first red flags was his recital of the Sith Code to May back in episode 2, but as the story unfolds, we learn that he also knew May's Sith Master before she did, and whilst he denies making a deal with the Sith himself, he seems to know an awful lot about how they operate, for someone who the databank says is a smuggler turned trader. And you know, it's not just his extensive knowledge of the Sith that causes us to point the finger in his direction, there's also some physical clues there too. For starters, when the Jedi came down on him for giving May the poison to kill Torben, they've got his confession on tape. They clearly know his deep involvement in it all, yet once faced with him, he manages to worm his way out of trouble, instead turning the spotlight onto May. Despite May treating Kymir like he's there to serve her, it's almost certainly what she's been led to believe. He actually manages to overpower her with ease when she confronts him on selling her out to the Jedi, which is a little bit odd if you ask me, but this fumbling trader to be able to overpower a Force user. Now in episode 4, we see May and Kymir arrive on Kothar. I've noticed they're both emptying their respective clothing pods, preparing for the long trek ahead through the forest. However, we actually see 3 clothing pods here, which could actually represent all 3 characters on this mission, May, Kymir, and then this leaves the 3rd clothing pod to contain the robes and the helmet of the Sith Master. Interestingly, we also see Kymir's travelling a lot heavier than May, with a smooth bulge formed in the back of his bag, which I think is the helmet as well. Now on the surface, Kymir's there to help May, as I mentioned earlier, very much acting as her sidekick, but at every given opportunity he attempts to influence her decision, and he pushes her in the direction of the Sith's plans, like when he told her she needed to kill Torben without poison, or giving her the location of the next hit. And he's always pushing her to do more, telling her she doesn't need to rest after running through the forest before facing Kelnaka, and that it's not impossible to kill a Jedi without a weapon, just like he'd know.
It's not impossible. You know that.
When you add all of this into the fact that Kelnaka then mysteriously turns up dead, just after Kymir goes ahead from May to get some water, only further deepens the suspicions. Kelnaka's wound was still smouldering when May arrived, so it's only just happened. He wasn't dead for long. I'm 100% convinced Kymir is the public identity, with the mask of May's Sith Master lurking in the shadows. Having a second identity makes him the latest in a long line of Sith that have done so, being able to deceive a group of Jedi to their face, and instead divert all of the attention back onto May perfectly demonstrates how the Sith were able to remain hidden for 1,000 years. And I don't think it's just us the fans that have come to this conclusion, I think May has as well. In episode 4, we were surprised when she made a turn in a complete opposite direction. Just after telling Kymir she wanted nothing more than to kill the Jedi, she then all of a sudden, within seconds, decides she doesn't want to do that anymore, and instead wants to be loyal to her sister, who earlier in the episode she called Jedi scum. I think May's come to realise there's far more to Kymir than meets the eye. She's probably picked up on a lot of the same breadcrumbs we have, which has led her to suspecting Kymir could be the Master himself, deceiving even her. Perhaps she suspected it for a while but continued to play the game. That's possibly why she decided to betray the Sith and trap him, all to try and draw out his true identity, only to panic when she reaches Kelnaka's to find him already dead. With the fact she's only just tied Kymir up and Kelnaka's wound is fresh, that leads her to believe that her own Kymir is the Master theory is wrong.
He's here.
Now, at this point, it almost seems the mystery is too easy to see through, but what if the true mystery isn't the identity of May's master at all, but rather if he's the Sith Master or the apprentice himself? And it's at this point we could go either way. However, I'm more inclined to say Kymir is the Sith apprentice. Would a Sith Lord really be out there putting in the groundwork the way Kymir has? I'd like to think Kymir is the apprentice of Tenebrous, who'll probably elude us until Season 2 or perhaps even Season 3. Maybe Kymir is his apprentice before he takes on Plagueis, although Tenebrous himself has been known to break the rule of 2 legends before, so maybe he's got them both. The introduction of Ki-Adi-Mundi into the show has already shown us they're willing to change legends concepts as they introduce them into the current canon. It's totally possible they could also age both Tenebrous and Plagueis up, making the more widely known Sith the master of this time, meaning Kymir would be the Sith apprentice before Palpatine. But there's also the chance that Kymir could actually be Tenebrous himself, so unlike Plagueis, who in canon is confirmed to be of the Mune species, and let's face it, there's no way a Mune's head's going to fit in that helmet, However, Tenebrous, although he's a Biff in Legends, also a species with a massive head, his species in canon hasn't been specified, leaving them open to changing it, which would probably go down well, but yeah. I mean, I could actually see them doing that if they intend to use that character a fair bit going forwards. It would just be easier for them to pull off in live action as one of the main characters, and there's also the fact that when you think of a Biff in general, you kind of think of the Cantina Band, which they'll probably want to separate Darth Tenebrous from. Either way, the Sith under the mask looks nailed on to be Chimere, but whether he's Darth Tenebrous or Plagueis, or if one of them is his master, is yet to be seen. But as always, I want to hear your thoughts, theories, and wildest speculations down in the comments below. Let's get the conversation going as the show heats up. Drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more. I'll catch you in the next one. The Force will be with you always.